The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue across the kitchen as I stood by the sink, scrubbing the last remnants of dinner off a plate. The rhythmic sound of water splashing against porcelain was oddly comforting, yet it echoed the emptiness I felt inside. I glanced at the clock on the wall, 7:30 p.m. Mark was still at the office, buried under another pile of reports, or perhaps another meeting that had run late. I sighed, the sound barely escaping my lips as I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window. I looked the part of the perfect housewife, hair neatly styled, makeup flawless, and an apron tied around my waist. Yet, beneath that polished exterior, lay a growing sense of loneliness. "Emily, honey, I'll be home late tonight," Mark had said that morning, his voice barely rising above the clatter of breakfast. He hadn't even looked up from his phone as he spoke, too absorbed in whatever was consuming his attention. "Okay," I had replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. I had spent the rest of the day aimlessly organizing the house, trying to fill the silence that enveloped me like a heavy blanket. It was a routine I had grown accustomed to, but today felt different. An unsettling restlessness lingered in my chest, a reminder that life was passing me by while I waited for Mark to return home. After finishing the dishes, I stepped outside into the cool evening air. The neighborhood was quiet, save for the occasional chirp of crickets and the distant sound of children playing. I wandered toward my garden, where the flowers were beginning to bloom in vibrant colors, a stark contrast to my mood. I knelt down, fingers brushing the soft petals of the daisies, lost in thought. "Beautiful, aren't they?" came a voice from behind me. I turned to see Jake, the new neighbor, leaning against the fence that separated our yards. He was handsome in a rugged way, with tousled hair and an easy smile that seemed to light up the dimming evening. "They are," I replied, surprised by the warmth that spread through me at his presence. "I've spent quite a bit of time trying to get them to bloom." "Looks like you've succeeded," he said, stepping closer, his blue eyes sparkling with mischief. "You've got a real knack for gardening." "Thanks," I chuckled, feeling a flutter of something I hadn't felt in a long time. "It's sort of my escape from everything else." "Everything else?" he asked, tilting his head slightly. "What's that?" I hesitated, unsure if I wanted to divulge the emptiness that filled my days. "Just the usual, work, home life. It can get a bit monotonous." "I get that," he said, a knowing grin spreading across his face. "Sometimes a little adventure is all we need." The playful banter flowed easily between us, each exchange drawing me further into his charm. We talked about gardening, our favorite movies, and even shared a few laughs over our mutual disdain for the local traffic. It felt exhilarating, as if I had stepped outside of myself, if only for a moment. "Maybe I should take some gardening tips from you," Jake said, his voice low and teasing. "I could use a hobby that doesn't involve spreadsheets and conference calls." "Anytime," I replied, feeling a spark of excitement in his gaze. "I could always use a gardening partner." As our laughter faded into the evening air, I felt a strange connection forming between us, something I hadn't realized I craved. Days turned into weeks, and our encounters became more frequent, each one leaving me both exhilarated and guilty. I would confide in Jake about my struggles, my feelings of isolation, and the growing distance between Mark and me. In return, Jake listened, offering a perspective that felt refreshing and liberating. One night, as the sun set into a canvas of oranges and purples, we found ourselves standing outside my house, our conversations turning softer, more intimate. "You deserve to be happy, Emily," he whispered, his breath warm against my cheek. And in that moment, the world around us faded away. Without thinking, I leaned in, and our lips met in a kiss that ignited a fire deep within me. It was electric, and for the first time in years, I felt alive. But as the kiss lingered, a wave of guilt washed over me. I pulled back, heart racing, torn between the desire that pulsed through me and the stark reality of my life. "What am I doing?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Just feeling," Jake replied, his eyes searching mine. And in that instant, I realized that this was only the beginning of something I couldn't fully comprehend. The sun hung low in the sky, casting an orange hue across my living room as I paced back and forth, trying to shake off the intoxicating memories of Jake. My heart raced at the thought of him, the way his smile ignited something within me that I thought had long since extinguished. I could still feel the warmth of his lips on mine, the way he made me forget the loneliness that filled my days with Mark. I was torn. How could I betray my husband, yet feel so alive in the presence of another man? "Emily, are you in there?" Sarah called from outside, her voice breaking through my tumultuous thoughts. I opened the door, plastering a smile on my face, though I felt anything but happy. "Hey, Sarah, come in." I gestured for her to enter, hoping she wouldn't notice the turmoil swirling within me. "What's going on? You seem a little off," she said, her brows furrowing with concern. I led her to the kitchen, trying to keep the conversation light. "I don't know. Just feeling a bit overwhelmed, I guess. Life, you know," I replied, pouring us both a glass of iced tea. "You've been quiet lately. Is it Mark?" she pressed, her eyes searching mine. I took a deep breath, the truth bubbling just under the surface, but I wasn't ready to share everything. "It's just the usual. He's been working late again," I said, avoiding her gaze. The truth was much more complicated, and I couldn't bring myself to admit the spark that ignited between me and Jake. "Em, you deserve to be happy. You know that, right?" she said softly. "Maybe it's time to think about what you want instead of what you feel obligated to do." Her words hung in the air, heavy with implications. I remembered Jake's laughter, the way he listened to me, really listened, and I felt a pang of longing. I don't want to hurt anyone," I murmured. "Life is too short to live for others, especially if you're unhappy. You have to choose yourself sometimes," she urged. I wanted to believe her, but the guilt was a constant shadow. After Sarah left, I couldn't shake the feeling of restlessness. I found myself texting Jake, my fingers hovering over the screen before typing a simple message. "Can we meet?" A response came almost instantly. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. I arrived at the park, my heart pounding, and scanned the area until I spotted him sitting on a bench, looking effortlessly charming in his casual attire. His eyes lit up as Ellie met mine, and I felt a rush of excitement wash over me. "Hey," he said, standing and pulling me into a warm embrace. I breathed in his scent, the familiar mix of cologne and something uniquely him. "I was hoping you'd come." "I almost didn't," I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why not?" he asked, searching my eyes for answers. I hesitated, the weight of my marriage pressing down on me. "Because I don't want to hurt Mark," I finally admitted, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "Emily, I get it. But what about your happiness? Does that not matter?" he replied, his tone earnest. I looked away, contemplating his words. "I don't know how to reconcile this," I said, my voice trembling. "It feels so wrong, yet it feels so right with you." He took a step closer, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. "We can keep this between us. Just you and me. No one else has to know." The intensity of his gaze sent shivers down my spine, igniting a fire deep within me. "Okay," I breathed, giving in to the moment. As we sat on the bench, the world around us faded away, leaving only the pulsating connection we shared. We laughed, our hands brushing against each other. I felt a sense of freedom that I hadn't experienced in years. But even in that blissful moment, a flicker of apprehension gnawed at me. The thought of Mark lingered like a dark cloud, casting a shadow over my newfound happiness. As we parted that evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was dancing on the edge of a cliff. Returning home late, my heart raced, not just from the thrill of being with Jake, but from the fear of facing Mark. The house was dark, save for the faint glow of the lamp in the corner. As I stepped inside, I was immediately hit by an uneasy silence. I took a deep breath, hoping to slip into the bedroom unnoticed. "Emily?" Mark's voice sliced through the stillness, and I froze in place. "I'm home," I called back, trying to sound casual, but my heart thrummed wildly in my chest. "Where have you been?" he asked, emerging from the shadows, his expression unreadable. "I went for a walk," I lied, forcing a smile. "A walk? At this hour?" He raised an eyebrow, skepticism lining his features. "Just needed some fresh air," I said, my voice steady despite the panic rising within me. He studied me for a moment, and I could feel the tension crackling in the air between us. "You've been distant lately. Is everything okay?" "Of course," I replied too quickly, my heart racing as I tried to maintain my facade. "I've just been busy with—" "Busy with what, Emily? You can talk to me," he pressed, a hint of frustration lacing his tone. I don't know, Mark. I feel a bit overwhelmed." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm here for you. Just tell me what's going on. I'm starting to worry." "Really, it's nothing," I insisted, my heart thumping in my chest. I could feel the weight of my secrets pressing down, suffocating me. Mark stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "If it's nothing, why do you look so guilty?" I held my breath, searching for a way to deflect his suspicions. "I'm just tired, that's all. Maybe I should get some sleep." As I brushed past him, I felt the tension between us thicken, but I couldn't face the truth. I needed to escape, to hide from the reality of my choices. Just as I reached the bedroom door, my phone buzzed on the counter, and I glanced back to see Jake's name flash across the screen. Excitement coursed through me, and I took a moment to breathe before responding. The thrill of our secret affair surged within me, a reminder of the world I was stepping into, a world filled with passion and uncertainty. I knew I was walking a tightrope, teetering dangerously between love and betrayal. As I sat in the dim light of the kitchen, the aroma of garlic and herbs lingering in the air, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living a lie. Mark had gone all out for dinner that night, the candles flickering softly on the table, casting shadows that danced across our faces. I forced a smile, my heart racing with anxiety as I tried to focus on his words. "You know, Em," he said, his brown eyes warm and sincere. "I've been thinking a lot about us lately. I want to make things right." I could hear the sincerity in his voice, but my thoughts were elsewhere, far away in Jake's arms, where laughter and passion replaced the emptiness I felt at home. "That sounds great, honey," I replied, my voice more strained than I intended. "I really appreciate this." I glanced down at my plate, the food untouched, an uneasy knot forming in my stomach. Mark continued, oblivious to my internal turmoil. "I just want you to know how much you mean to me. You've always been the heart of this family." His words should have warmed my heart, but instead, they filled me with guilt. How could I be the heart of anything when I was busy tearing it apart? When dinner ended, I offered to clear the table, needing a moment to collect my thoughts. As I washed the dishes, the water felt hot against my skin, but nothing compared to the heat of my guilty conscience. I replayed Mark's words in my head, the gravity of his affection weighing heavily on me. After tidying up, I couldn't hold back any longer. "I'll be right back," I said, my voice shaky. I could feel Mark's gaze on me, but I didn't dare to look back. I slipped out of the house, my heart pounding, desperate to escape the suffocating love that felt more like a cage than a sanctuary. The air outside was cool against my flushed cheeks, and as I hurried down the street toward Jake's house, the guilt morphed into excitement. I felt alive, my heart racing not from anxiety, but from the thrill of what was to come. Jake had become my escape, a brief interlude in a life that felt increasingly like a performance, and I was tired of pretending. As I reached his front porch, I was met with an unexpected sight. Jake was outside, his voice raised in an argument with his ex-girlfriend Lisa. Panic surged through me as I heard the sharp edge of her words. "Jake, you can't just pretend I don't exist! You think I won't tell her the truth?" I hesitated, frozen in place. My heart sank as I realized that the truth could shatter everything. What truth? I wanted to scream and demand answers, but I stood rooted to the spot, my chest tightening with each word that spilled from her lips. "Emily deserves to know who you really are," she shouted, her face twisted with anger. I felt my stomach drop. I wanted to retreat, to turn back and run home, but something inside me pushed me forward. "Lisa, stop!" Jake's voice was desperate, and I could see the frustration etched across his handsome face. I stepped closer, my heart racing as I caught snippets of their heated exchange, my mind reeling. "Why are you so afraid of your past? You think she'll love you if she knows what you've done?" Lisa shot back, her words like daggers. I clenched my fists, torn between the urge to confront Jake and the fear of what I might learn. "Emily is different," Jake insisted, his voice softer now, but the conviction was gone. "She doesn't need to know everything. It's not what we have." But wasn't it? Wasn't the foundation of our affair built on secrets and lies? I couldn't breathe as I stumbled back, my mind racing. I turned to leave, feeling the weight of betrayal. I had come to him seeking solace, but now I was left questioning everything. As I walked away from Jake's house, the chill of the night wrapped around me. I felt as if I were drifting through a fog, lost and alone. Guilt gnawed at my insides, but the uncertainty was worse. I didn't know if I could trust Jake, or if I was merely a fleeting distraction for him. With each step, I felt the distance between my two worlds widening, a chasm filled with secrets, guilt, and unfulfilled desires. I couldn't help but wonder if I was making a terrible mistake, one that would cost me everything. My heart ached as I entered my home, the warmth of the evening fading away, leaving me in a cold reality I could no longer ignore. The afternoon sun poured through my window, casting long shadows across the living room. I found myself sitting at the edge of my couch, my heart pounding as I replayed the argument between Jake and his ex-girlfriend in my mind. I couldn't shake off the nagging feeling of uncertainty that gnawed at me. Was Jake really the man I thought he was? Or was he just another fleeting distraction in my life, one that would end in heartbreak? With a deep breath, I picked up my phone and typed a quick message to Jake. "Can we talk? I need to understand what happened." My fingers trembled as I hit send, the weight of the decision heavy on my shoulders. I thought back to the way Jake's eyes lit up when he smiled, how he made me feel alive. But the turmoil swirling in my mind cast a shadow over those memories. Not long after, my phone buzzed. It was Jake. "Meet me at the park in an hour?" My heart raced. There was a mix of excitement and dread as I quickly agreed. The park had become our secret haven, a place where we could escape from reality. But today, I needed answers. As I arrived, the familiar scent of fresh grass and blooming flowers enveloped me. I spotted Jake leaning against a tree, his posture relaxed, yet something in his eyes betrayed a flicker of concern. I approached him cautiously, my heart thudding in my chest. "Hey," I said softly, trying to muster a smile. "Hey, you made it." His voice was warm, but I could sense the tension beneath it. I was worried. "I need to talk about what happened with your ex," I blurted out, the words tumbling from my lips before I could think them through. "I need to know what's going on with you." Jake's expression shifted, and I could see a wall go up. "It's complicated, Emily. She doesn't know when to let go. I thought I was done with her." "Complicated?" I echoed, the word hanging between us like an uninvited guest. "You told me you were free, that you wanted something real." "I do want something real with you," he insisted, stepping closer. "But she's not just going to disappear. I promise you, I'm focused on us." I wanted to believe him, but doubt crept in. "Then why did she say what she did? Why did she bring up your past?" Jake ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident on his face. "Because she's manipulative. She knows how to play games. I've been trying to move on from that life." "Move on?" I echoed, my heart sinking. "What if you're still tied to that life? I can't be just another chapter in your story, Jake." His eyes softened, and I could see the sincerity in them. "You're not just another chapter. You're the one I want. I know it's messy, but I'm trying to figure it all out." Just as I opened my mouth to respond, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from Mark. "Where are you?" The simple text sent a chill down my spine. The last thing I wanted was to drag my husband into this chaos. "Let's go somewhere else," I suggested, glancing around as if the trees might eavesdrop. "I can't do this here." Jake nodded, and we walked in silence, the weight of our conversation hanging heavily between us. I led us to a secluded bench, a quiet corner of the park, where we could speak without interruptions. Jake took a seat beside me, his arm brushing against mine, igniting a spark of warmth that momentarily distracted me from my swirling thoughts. "Emily," he started, turning to face me, his expression earnest. "I know I haven't been completely honest about my past. It's not something I like to talk about, but I want you to know everything." "What do you mean?" I asked, my pulse quickening. "What else is there?" "I used to be involved with some shady people," he admitted, his voice low. "I got caught up in a world I shouldn't have. That's why I moved here, to start fresh. But sometimes, the past doesn't let go so easily." My heart raced as I processed his words. "So, is that why your ex is still in the picture? Did she manipulate you?" "Yes," he replied, his voice filled with frustration. "And I don't want that life anymore. I want something real with you, but it's hard to shake off the past." I felt a mix of emotions, fear, anger, but also a strange sense of understanding. "Jake, I don't know if I can just ignore it. I can't be involved in something that's already so tangled. Please, just give me a chance to prove myself," he pleaded, his eyes searching mine. "I want to show you that I can be different." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again, this time a call from Mark. I hesitated, my heart sinking. "I have to take this," I said reluctantly, my stomach twisting in knots. "Emily," Jake said, his voice tinged with worry. "Please, think about what I said." I nodded, but the uncertainty lingered as I answered the call. "Mark? Where are you? You've been gone for hours," he said, his tone clipped. "I just needed some air," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can you come home? We need to talk," he insisted, and I could hear the underlying tension in his voice. "Okay, I'll be right there." I hung up, feeling the weight of my decision pressing down on me. As I looked at Jake, I knew I was standing at a crossroads. The choices ahead felt daunting, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to face the consequences. The moment Mark confronted me, the air in the room thickened with a tension I could hardly bear. It was as if he could see right through the carefully constructed facade I had built around my life, and I felt exposed, vulnerable. "Emily, I need you to be honest with me," he said, his voice steady, yet laced with an undercurrent of anger. "I know about the investigator. What is going on?" I swallowed hard, panic tightening my throat. "It's nothing, Mark. I promise, just work stress. You know how it gets." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but I had to say something to deflect his piercing gaze. His brow furrowed, and for a moment, I saw the flicker of hurt in his eyes. "Don't lie to me. You can't just brush this off. I deserve more than that." The accusation hung in the air like a lead weight. I wanted to scream, to tell him everything, the truth about Jake, the thrill of the stolen moments, the way he made me feel alive again. But instead, I felt the guilt clawing at my insides, suffocating me. "Mark, My voice caught, and I hesitated. What could I say? The man standing in front of me was my husband, the person I had promised to love and cherish. But the truth was, I had fallen for someone else. I had betrayed him in ways I could never take back. He stepped closer, his presence imposing. "Emily, I'm asking you to be real with me. If there's something I need to know, if you're hiding something, I need to hear it from you." I felt the walls closing in. "I'm not hiding anything," I exclaimed, the desperation in my voice ringing false even to my own ears. I could see the doubt flickering in his eyes, and it only fed my anxiety. "Then why do I feel like I'm losing you?" His voice softened, and I could hear the genuine concern beneath the anger. "You're distant. You're not the same woman I married." In that moment, I could no longer hold back the tide of emotions flooding through me. I turned away, biting my lip as tears threatened to spill. "I don't know what to say, Mark. I feel trapped." "Trapped? By what?" "By me?" The hurt in his voice pierced my heart. "Emily, I love you. I would do anything for you. But this isn't like you. You need to talk to me." "I can't," I whispered, my resolve crumbling. I felt like I was teetering on the edge of a precipice, and the thought of jumping into the unknown was both terrifying and exhilarating. After our volatile confrontation, I met Jake in a secluded area behind the park, the place where we had first shared our laughter and secrets. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a silvery glow that felt almost magical. But the magic was tinged with unease as I approached him. "Hey," he said, his eyes brightening when he saw me. "You look upset. What happened?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "Mark knows about the investigator. He confronted me." Jake's expression shifted, a flicker of concern flashing across his face. "What did you tell him?" "Just that it was nothing," I replied, frustration creeping into my voice. "But it isn't nothing, Jake. I can't keep living this lie." He stepped closer, his presence calming, yet electrifying. "Then don't. You deserve to be happy, Emily. We can find happiness together. You just have to take a leap of faith." "But leaving Mark..." The words felt heavy, laden with guilt and uncertainty. "It's not that simple." "Maybe it should be," he urged, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my heart race. "What do you want? What do you really want?" I hesitated, grappling with the weight of the choices before me. "I want to feel free, Jake. But what if I'm making the biggest mistake of my life?" He reached out, taking my hands in his. "Sometimes The biggest mistake is not taking a chance. You can't let fear hold you back. Think about it. As I looked into his eyes, I felt the pull of desire and the promise of something more. I imagined a life without Mark, a life where I could be with someone who made me feel seen and cherished. The thought was intoxicating. With a surge of determination, I made my decision. I want a separation, I finally said, the words spilling out before I could second-guess myself. The sense of liberation washed over me, but it was short-lived. Just as I was about to relish in my newfound courage, Mark's voice echoed in my mind. I've known about your affair for weeks. My heart dropped as I remembered the look on Mark's face, the pain etched deep within. Suddenly, I felt exposed again, vulnerable in a way that left me breathless. Wait, what? I stammered, panic rising, as I recalled the investigative work Mark had put into uncovering my secret. I have proof, he said, pulling out his phone. My heart raced as dread settled in the pit of my stomach. Emily, I didn't want to believe it, but... He paused, looking torn between anger and sorrow. What had I done? The weight of my decisions crashed down on me, and I suddenly felt like I was teetering on the edge of an abyss, unsure of what awaited me on the other side. I stood there, my heart racing as Mark's words echoed in my ears. You think I didn't know? I've been watching you, Emily. The accusation hung heavy in the air, wrapping around my chest like a vice. I felt exposed, a deer caught in the headlights of my husband's fury. His eyes were dark, filled with betrayal and anger, and I could see the pain etched on his face, a mirror of my own turmoil. What are you talking about? I managed to stammer, my voice shaky. Panic flooded my senses as I tried to process the reality that Mark had been documenting my every move. I thought I was careful, but he had been one step ahead, lurking in the shadows, while I lost myself in my affair with Jake. Don't play innocent with me, Emily. I have video evidence of you with him. You think I'd let you get away with this? Mark's voice rose, each word a dagger piercing through my facade. I could feel the walls closing in on me, the weight of my lies pressing down until I could barely breathe. Mark, please, I pleaded, desperation creeping into my tone. I didn't mean for it to happen. I just felt so alone. The admission slipped out before I could stop it, the truth spilling from my lips like a confession. His expression hardened, and he took a step closer, as if trying to reclaim the power he felt slipping away. Alone? Is that really your excuse? While you were off playing house with Jake, I was trying to make a living for us. I've been in contact with his ex-girlfriend. She has information that could ruin him, Emily. The words hit me like a slap, sending a chill down my spine. My mind raced with the implications. I had never considered the consequences of my choices, not just for myself, but for Jake as well. You can't do that, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, fear creeping into my veins. Why not? He's been deceiving you and you want me to just sit back and let it happen? Mark's face was a mask of righteousness, and I could see the fire in his eyes. I knew he was right about one thing. Jake had been hiding parts of his life from me, but the thought of Mark confronting him sent a wave of dread crashing over me. Mark, don't, I warned, but it was too late. He had already made up his mind. Before I knew it, we were driving to Jake's house, my heart pounding in my chest. The air felt thick with tension, and every moment that passed felt like an eternity. What exactly do you plan to say to him? I asked, trying to buy time, to think of a way to diffuse the situation. Mark glanced at me, his jaw clenched tightly. I'll tell him the truth. That he's playing with fire, and he doesn't even know it. When we arrived, I felt a sense of dread wash over me. The house was dark, and silence enveloped us. Where is he? I asked, panic rising in my throat. Mark stepped out of the car, frustration etched on his face. He should be here. I'll give him a piece of my mind. As we approached the door, I felt an icy grip of fear. Just then, a woman stepped out from the shadows, a stranger with striking features and an air of confidence. You must be Jake's friends? She asked, eyeing us with curiosity. Who are you? Mark demanded, his voice rough. I'm Jake's sister, she replied, her expression unreadable. And you need to know something. Jake isn't who you think he is. My heart raced. What do you mean? I asked, stepping forward. The woman took a deep breath, her eyes flickering with something akin to sympathy. He's left town. He didn't want to, but it's complicated. He was trying to protect you, Emily. Protect me? I echoed, disbelief flooding my veins. Yes. He wrote you a letter. She handed me an envelope, her gaze softening for a moment. He wanted you to know that he cares about you, but he couldn't stay. There are things in his past that could hurt you. As I clutched the letter, confusion and heartbreak swirled within me. The world felt like it was spinning out of control, leaving me caught between two men, two lives. What am I supposed to do? I whispered, feeling utterly lost. Mark's voice broke through my thoughts, filled with tension. Let's go, Emily. We need to talk about this. But I stood frozen, the weight of the letter heavy in my hands, knowing that whatever choice I made would change everything. In that moment, I was torn between the past I had built with Mark and the thrilling, dangerous future Jake had promised. The uncertainty loomed like a storm on the horizon, and I was left standing at the edge, heart racing, unsure of which way to turn.